Hey, everybody. I want to thank everybody for watching my NFL owners meeting videos. And I want to thank the NFL once again. And now we're shifting gears to talk the politics of sanitation with a key member of and a major player in that area in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area, in particular, San Leandro in that region. And this is my friend Benny Lee. And Benny is one of the directors for the Oro Loma Sanitation District Board. He is running for reelection as its director. And Director Lee, honor to have you.
Well, I've been watching your blogs, right, and your podcast for quite some time. I'm actually honored to be on your
Oh, thank
podcast
you.
because,
That made my day. Thank you.
I remember one friend asking me what I thought about your services, and I just says, "Hey, he's credible."
Thank you. I appreciate that. By the way, oh, and by
Yeah.
the way, this is not Lee. Benny Lee is news. So this is so anyone thinking, "Hey, did Lee hire me and all that?" I'll be honored to have him as a client, but that's not what this is. He's a friend, and I had this idea of having him on because I believe viewers should know about what he's doing and what the organization he represents does, and that's the
Right.
idea. And so, without any further ado, Benny, tell us what the Oro Loma Sanitation District does.
Okay, well, I'll be very clear on this, right? The sanitation district actually has three core missions, right? We treat wastewater, right? That's basically everything that goes into sewer, and we treat that to make sure that it's cleaner than the day before discharging it. Second thing is we do solid waste. We pick up your trash. And the third thing, which is actually very important, right? Which is we try to recover as much organics as possible. So you think of it this way, right? One of the things that I've always said from the dais is that I remember Carl Sagan doing his testimony in Congress 40 years ago, where he was
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
remember that.
it-
Yeah,
You
yeah,
remember that, right?
yeah, I
And
do. Yeah.
it's because we just suddenly had satellites that actually could detect emissions,
Mm-hmm.
and he showed in areas of California, particularly where the cows were, and he also showed areas where there was this kind of pinkish color coming up from the land, and that was all the trash that we had that was creating greenhouse gases. All right, so that's why I refer recovering organics is very important because they actually create these emissions.
Oh,
So that's our core mission. That's what we do, right? And I was elected 4 years ago. I want to compliment the board before me, right, for having the wisdom. It was a split decision, but they basically said, "Hey, we need to basically up our infrastructure because some of our pipes are over 100 yeyears old, right? And
wow.
many of it's over 80 years old. And of course, there are some new aspects of the community, but most of the community was built in 60s and before, and the newer aspects were built in the 70s. So you can imagine in the 60s, you're talking about, or 50s, you're talking about over 70 years old infrastructure,
I
and
want to
it's the
follow up
old
on that.
clay pipes.
I want to follow up on that. I was going to ask about
Yeah,
this other question, but I'll get to that in a second.
sure.
This is more important. You're saying we have pipes that are 100 years old. Here's where I'm going with this. We have news report after news report after news report nationwide about
Hmm.
this bridge collapsing, or in
Yes.
Flint, Michigan, the water not operating and getting people clean water to the people that need it, and so on.
Right.
Are we in the middle of a national infrastructure crisis and not addressing it?
So the answer is yes, right? And that was actually identified back in 2015 and 2015. When I was on the city council in San Leandro between 2012 and 2020. One of the things that I did is I participated in the National League of Cities, and we saw that our infrastructure was crumbling. So for many years, we pushed something called Rebuild with Us, and eventually it happened, I believe, after Biden was elected, and that was called Build Back Better.
Yeah, I
So that
remember that.
that
Right.
funding, we still have two and a quarter years left in that funding. It was a I think $6 trillion bill, 320 billion a year, and 65 billion was put towards broadband infrastructure, of which 6 billion comes to the state of California.
Hmm.
So, but what I'm concerned about is that we're not really tapping into it. We're prioritizing other things instead of focusing on our infrastructure. And infrastructure is the heart to modernization.
Certainly is. So you're saying we're prioritizing other things. What things are we prioritizing that are taking us away from water? You know.
Well, it really depends on their jurisdictions, right? I think we're starting to work on some social issues that started from 20, actually before 2020,
Mhm.
but 2020 was the crux of it during the COVID pandemic. And I think what it is that it's either you're all in on one side or you're all in on the other side, and there's no room for the middle. And we need to find that room in the middle, because that room in the middle is basically where we're both agreeing to the same thing. We're at the service of the people.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I have this summation that we've forgotten how to systemically operate our cities amidst hyperpolitization. And one could say it started during the Trump era, whatever. But the bottom line is we don't seem to want to actually, you know, pull together people from different areas of life to fix our problems as much as we did in the past. Am I right or wrong about that? And is that contributing to this?
Uh, well, you're right from a macro perspective, but from a micro perspective, there's a whole bunch of different personalities in politics. When I first got elected, and I'm not going to name names, but like there's some person who said, "Hey, if you don't vote along with me, I'm going to make it bad for you."
Ah, ah,
Yeah,
ah.
so and I don't operate with threats, right? I operate on one thing. Do I believe that I'm at the surface of the people? Do I believe that we're going to do something that's right? I may interpret it different from you, but at the end goal is we're still at the surface of the people.
Absolutely. Hey, I have a question that some viewers may be rattling around in their minds. Where does the Oro Loma Sanitation District begin and EB Mud end?
Actually, EB Mud doesn't service any of the jurisdictions that we cover. They just provide us water.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, EB Mud actually services Oakland. So
Mm-hmm.
if you take a look at San Leandro actually has their own sewer district, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really, it's under the scope of the San Leandro City Council, and they put recently in the last 15 years a $50 million project, basically modernizing their digesters so that they can treat the wastewater going out.
Yeah. And so basically, in terms of, for example, BART,
Mhm.
uh, you're one of the taxing agencies, or you were one of the taxing agencies at a redevelopment area with that is such that it would be impacted by. In other words, if they take the property tax, they're taking some of your money, right?
Uh, not so much, because we're really tied to ratepayers, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, because we have sewer rates
Mm-hmm.
and we also have garbage rates, right? And of
Mm-hmm.
course we have different zones. Like San Leandro is a different zone than um, than San Lorenzo.
Mm-hmm.
Marginally, we pay a little more in San Leandro. I think if I calculated right, it's roughly about a buck 25 more.
Wow. So looking forward, or I should say, on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of infrastructure need and where the infrastructure is right now in your jurisdiction, where is it? One being awful, 10 being fantastic.
So I would say we're from an infrastructure perspective, I would say we're probably rising towards the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the project for replacing 40 miles of the most critical pipe that fails the most, that's at 27 miles with 13 miles left, if that says anything, right?
Wow.
And we're
Yeah.
doing about 4 miles a year. We have a world-class staff, and we're focused on making the class even more world-class.
Hmm. This. Let me
Yeah, so
ask you.
we think of it this way: you have the physical infrastructure, but
Right.
you need to invest in your people infrastructure. And one of the things that when I came aboard, the board leadership always went to conferences so that we can gain the best. But I push for not just only the leadership level, but also staff level, because if your staff suddenly begins to interact with peers across the United States and see some of the greatest innovations, they're going to bring them back, and you're going to gain some value from that.
This is a fascinating conversation. Hey, I'm
Yeah.
curious. Given the rate of growth in population in the Bay Area, or let me ask: have we net lost population, or just had a reduction in the rate of growth?
I think there are some areas definitely that had some loss in population. Oakland is definitely one of them, right? San Leandro, I don't believe we had it. So every single year we've been gaining about roughly about 5,000 cents for every single census. So when you go back to was it 2000, we're at
Mm.
79,000 population. In 2010, we're at 84,000 and change, right? Almost
Wow. Right.
85,000, and now we're at 90,000.
Huh. So you went down, well, up,
No, we never
down.
went down. We constantly went 5,000 a year,
Oh, okay, like that.
5,000
Got
a decade.
a decade. Okay, right.
Yeah, so that's San Leandro, and but the other jurisdictions may be a little different, right? I haven't really measured because if you draw lines around Oro Loma in terms of where it covers, it's sort of like a figure eight.
Oh, let me find Oro Loma. If I,
Actually, go to my website,
yeah,
bennylee.us, and you'll see a map of the district.
I'm doing that right now.
.us.
BennyLee.us. That's clever. Of all the Benny Lees in the world, you're the only one. That's, hey man, you're a hero in my book. I love.
Hey,
Nice work.
let's put it this way, right? I love the country I'm born in, right?
Yes,
But I'm a worldly person. I love the world.
there it is, folks. He's the only
Yes,
Benny Lee in the entire world that has that URL. Bravo, bravo.
thank you.
I mean, because did you? I mean, I have to because I build websites as part of what I do, right? And so
Yes,
I'm always buying URLs here and there. That's
yes.
a hat trick, man. Congratulations.
Well, when we get elected to office, we have to swear an oath, right? That to defend the Constitution,
Yes, sir.
right? And
Yes, sir.
when I say I defend the Constitution, I even defend the Constitution against my own politicians, right? When I think they're
Yeah,
doing wrong.
yeah.
Yeah, and policymakers don't necessarily get it right, but in most of the cases, they're pretty good. You know,
Hey, so let's get that map.
I think you could just scroll down. You should be able to see it.
Okay.
Map, yeah. Scroll
There
a
we
little
go.
more.
Oh, right there. You see it in the window here?
Yes, I see it
It's
clearly.
Yeah, that's it. Let me see if I can enlarge it more, uh,
Yeah,
so that it takes a more prominent space. Uh, here.
yeah. If you want, I can send you the map too. It's a. I did it in Google Maps.
Sure. Although I think for these purposes, I think this is actually working.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So we,
Yeah, and
oh,
the reason why I put it on my website is it's important for folks to say, "Hey, am I in your district?" Right? Well,
right.
when you see my name on the voter pamphlet, yes, right. But here's you can pretty much see the outline of where it covers.
It's fascinating. This
It
is actually
covers about
two.
42% of the population of San Leandro.
And so, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking at what appear to be two non-contiguous zones, right?
Yes. And you see a
That's it
little fine line that's sort of like a sewer line, right? That goes between Fairview to that
right here.
little hangout. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Wow.
that's actually that small little thing is sort of like a right of way that we still have to uh work with the jurisdictions on.
Is
So
this
we don't own
underground?
the
Oh, is
right of
this,
ways. That's our
huh,
coverage.
wow. Is this underground or is it just strictly
Yes,
a
it's
legal?
underground.
Okay.
It's underground.
Fascinating. So, folks, if you live along here, now you know that there's a very important piece of real estate under you, under your real estate.
Yeah, well, basically, it's the sewers, right? It all flows, right, and it flows into the system, into our collection systems. In some cases, we have lift stations because it's all gravity based. We have to pump it up so that it just sinks down.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Say that again, Benny, because I.
So it's all gravity based. It's basically the wastewater flowing down, and in other areas where it's lower, we have lift stations, right? And the lift stations pumps it up high so that it creates the pressure going down.
Say that what happens, hiccup, and I was asking you what the budget for the organization as we had a buffer.
So the
So
current
could you,
budget is 28 million. When I arrived, it was 25 million, right? So it's a really small
hmm,
budget in terms of assets. If you value the all our assets. I believe that the assets is close to 130 million. That's the sewer infrastructure. That's the all pretty much the vehicles that we use, the digesters, the whole plant operations. So the value of our assets is 130 million, but the budget is 28 million, and it's pretty much ratepayer funded.
Wow, this is excellent. So if you're reelected as director, what
Mhm.
are your priorities?
Well, my priorities, I spell it on the website, right? To provide the highest value and committed to the highest value for the value that they get, right? And Oro Loma has a history of providing that very good service. The prior boards from many years ago had a very noble mission of trying to keep the lowest rates, and they did. In fact, our sewer rates are half that of pretty much most of the Bay Area. The problem is you can't, if you take a look at all the storms that we've had in the last 7 years, right? They have been becoming more and more significant. In fact, we've
Yes.
measured all the significant storms in the last 60 years.
Hmm.
Half of those significant storms happened in the last 7 years, or 8 years actually.
Climate change.
Yes,
And
it's
how
well. Remember Lake Tulare in California?
I do.
It was gone for 150 years. Now it's
That's oh,
back.
well, I have to ask, where are we? How am I doing about sea level sea level rise may impact what you all are doing?
So actually, there are wonderful agencies that actually deal with that. So the BCDC, the Bay Coastal Development Commission, they
Hmm.
actually measure that. And I remember on council when we were talking about the marina project. Originally, when I first went on council, they said, "Hey, it's gonna rise, all right, by 2100, 36 inches." And then
Mm.
2, 3 years into it, they said it's going to rise 55 inches. So the developer had to reshift their project, right?
Wow.
Now that number went down to 29 inches. So
Yeah.
that
Wow.
that number's hard to project. Remember, it's based off information that they collect, and they
Hmm.
just try to model out and they try to impute what's happening. One thing that we do know, right, is we are rising in temperature, right? And rising in temperature is going to have some devastating consequences. Obviously, to polar ice cap. The north polar ice caps are gone. We're seeing some crumbling happening in Antarctica, which is problematic. When I went to on a cruise 5 years ago to look at the glaciers, they're beautiful, but they're
Hmm.
disappearing because I saw pictures of them, what they look like. Literally 70 years ago, and they were covering a much greater degree of coverage than what they are now.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so one thing that we know, we are warming, right? And then there's a contributing agent to it, which is greenhouse gases, which is definitely adding to the mix. And that was the Carl Sagan
Right.
congressional testimony that still a hero of mine.
And so, other curiosity that I have here, having said all of that,
Mhm.
is are you satisfied with the level of regional attention to this problem that has been applied?
Well, I believe that the message is out there.
Hmm.
How I think the intention's out there. I think everybody has a different interpretation, particularly when you talk about policymakers, and that's where the danger is, right? Some policymakers shoot from the hip, and they make decisions based off their gut feeling rather than talking to experts. And
Right.
I think it's always important to make sure that you talk to an expert. I'm not a climate scientist. I will never, I can model data. Uh, if you give me the data and you give me the criteria, but then
Hmm.
I'm not that scientist. I don't know all the chemistry that goes into the atmosphere.
Hmm.
Um, so we need to basically bring in more experts, right, to provide some guidance. And I'll share a little tidbit. I recall when I first got on the council, and then I was really, pretty blue, green, or whatever it is, right? Meaning that I didn't know all the respects to policy, but because I had a very strong audit background, and we went through an audit, and we had a number of material weaknesses, and no one on my council questioned it. And I had to explain to them in very simple words the three different deficiencies: the control deficiency, the significant deficiency, as well as the material weakness. I said a CD means you're not following your controls, control deficiency. As SD, you have no controls. And MW, you don't have any, you don't know what you're doing. And we
Yeah.
had multiple ones. And I couldn't believe that they were letting it go. And, to the credit of then mayor, right? He just says, okay, we need to make sure that we remediate these, right? And then the following year it became a significant deficiency because the controls still weren't there, but there was effort, right? And then the following years, we got an award.
Congratulations. Wow. Hey, so
Yeah.
shifting gears a little bit, first of all, please reelect Benny Lee to his directorship. He's obviously an expert at what he does. He's clearly representing the people of the district better than just well, outstandingly. But I want to ask you, since you're also a San Leandro city councilman, what do you
Hmm.
think of the current race between Ed Hernandez and Brian Azevedo? And full disclosure, as you know, folks, Zenny 62 Media is a digital organization hired specifically to get out news because Councilor Azevedo has been so wrongly attacked, also by someone who is paid to do so. So, sort of fighting fire with fire, just to put that disclosure out there. But Brian's also my friend. I'm very proud to represent him. But just curious what you think of all of that's gone on, you know.
So, in full disclosure, I've known Ed Hernandez longer than I known Brian. I knew
Yep.
that he was intentionally running for council, right? I'll just put it this way, without just being too negative on this, right?
Mhm.
I'll just say that early on, I could not support him, right? And when I heard about Brian and I met the guy, this guy was just truly committed to the community, right? And I supported him. He didn't win that first time, right? But then he was
Right.
very determined, right? And it didn't stop him because after that loss, the first 3 months, he started doing cleanups in the city.
Yeah. He loved this. He loves the
And
city. Yeah.
he loves the city, and he started focusing on a lot of things. He wasn't even thinking of running for re-election. He just felt that this is something that he needed to do, and then he sent out messages to the public via Facebook to say, "Hey, you need my help? Let me know, right? I'd love to help you." So I remember in 2018, he was working for a food bank,
Yeah.
and it was at Bethel Community Church, and he saw a lot of folks coming through who didn't speak the language, and it was just slowing up the line. He called me up and said, "Hey, Benny, do you still remember saying your Chinese?" I says, "Well, yeah, like a bad cell phone call." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to practice my Chinese, right?" And I started serving, and like we had some hilarious conversations it's just really kind of good to see that they're getting the service and suddenly they're walking away with a smiling, and we're moving the line much more efficiently. And let's put it this way: at the end of the day, most of the food was gone, which is a good thing because you
Yeah.
don't want food to rot.
Yeah.
It's going to a good use. So he brought me in. He brought a number of folks in who could speak different languages just to make sure that we can move the line. I mean, that's what it was, unintentional goodness of what he
Yeah.
was doing.
Yeah.
So, Ed, I sat with him. He fought with me on certain things that I didn't think he should have, right? Like public Wi-Fi. Right? He
Hmm.
said it was going to be bad for kids. I said public Wi-Fi
What?
is not bad for kids, right? This is back in 2017. It's recorded on the retreat. Both him and Lee Thomas tried to fight me on that. They say I don't want kids to be staring at their devices, right, out in the parks. And here's the thing. At that time, as a director of public Wi-Fi for the county of San Mateo, I knew all the different use cases, and I said, "Hey, you know what? We have families who can't leave their house because their kid has to finish their homework, and so the rest of the family suffers.
Yep.
But because we have public Wi-Fi in the park, the family can get actually go out to the park, right? The kid can finish his homework, the rest of the family is enjoying it, and when they're done, they can enjoy it. So,
And
we got to make it ubiquitous for everyone."
and not only that, with public Wi-Fi, you can keep in track of your kid
Yes,
cell phone better wherever your kid
yes.
might be. You know, so
Oh,
they're actually
absolutely.
hurting it, right?
Well,
It,
absolutely. And let's put it this way, COVID hit, and it was good that we had that parks, right? Because uh the usage went up significantly in San Leandro because nobody, the kids didn't have access, right? I know the school district tried to give out something like about 6,000 San Leandro Unified. They gave out 6,000 hotspots. Here's the problem, though, right? We have barely 100 cell phone towers, right? And that's 60 hotspots per tower.
Yeah.
Imagine that what your phone call is going to be like, right? And
Yeah.
it was a very wise gesture, but it was not understanding what you're basically giving 100 kids bike lane access on a 4 feet 4 foot bike lane. It just doesn't work, right? And it worked for some, but it's a turnoff to many kids, right? And when you're looking at a 14-inch laptop, you think that you're at the back of the room. Try that, multiply that times three.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I give it a lot of credit to the kids who stuck with the system. We got to rescue the kids who fell out of the system because you know what, it they didn't care. And I could tell you that, like in Ravenswood, which is a school district which was under Gina Sadaria, she was so wise to leverage the public Wi-Fi that we built, um, because she started counseling students. And like because being cooped up at home created a lot of mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, this is something else. Hey, so I know you got a little time, and so I want to
Yes.
thank you. I want to invite you back and
Yes.
come talk more about the situation with the sanitary district and
Yes.
politics there, and climate change, and also and something that I want to track more now too, and that's our crumbling infrastructure, and what
Mhm.
should be a national effort to revive it. I'm really concerned about. I just want to ask you. I'm Benny. I'm really concerned that we are not including pipes, airports, and everything. It seems like across the board, and I'm happy to be wrong, we're underfunded. What say you?
So that's certainly true because, well, uh, I think the messaging is wrong.
Okay.
That's the best way to describe it. The reality is that we've been criticized because we're raising the rates, and we need to because we hired a world-class consultant. We didn't just make the decision. We chartered our general manager to bring in a world-class consultant to do a rate study, and
Mm-hmm.
that rate study confirmed what we needed to do. It was a very difficult decision, particularly in an election year, right? Where we're doing 15% increase for 5 years. We're statutorily we can only do it for 5 years, and that's going to literally double the rates in 5 years.
Yeah.
Now we're getting a lot of criticism for that, but you know what? It's the right decision because I look at it this way: how important is it for you to have the ability to flush your toilet? Okay, it's very important, right?
Oh, right.
And during what December 31st, 2022, when we had that great storm, it was the greatest storm we ever had in history
Right. I
since
remember.
we started
Right.
recording it, right?
Right.
And it overwhelmed our system. And we saw sewer lid covers pop up, right? And let's put it this way: there was poop flowing on the streets. That's a public health issue,
That
right?
there's a video I have
Yeah,
in a video where over off 98th
yeah,
and on the way to the airport, that area got flooded.
yes.
And I mean, I never seen anything like that in my life. But go ahead, you're right. Yeah.
Well, and you have to be worried about the public health concerns, right? While we're not a public health agency, what any failures on our part will result in public health issues.
That's right. Well
Yeah,
said.
particularly during COVID.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Folks, follow my friend, vote for my friend, get him back in there. Hey, Benny, come
Yes,
on back. And hey,
I
folks,
definitely will.
that ends this stream. Benny, you don't have to move a muscle. I got you. Besides, I want to debrief after we're done. Uh, subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark Zenny62blog.com and OaklandNewsOnline.com. And that ends this stream. And
Keep
Benny,
up the
don't
great work,
thank
Zenny.
you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Hey, great guests. Don't move a muscle. Gotcha. And